All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting for September 1st, 2020. This is the meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Let's begin this morning with an invocation. I'd like to call Pastor Mike Jones from New Hope to come to the podium. And please rise for the invocation. Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning. Let's join our hearts in prayer. Our gracious, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the way that you have provided for each of us and all of us through every generation. You have blessed us and been faithful, even when we've turned away from you or tuned you out. But Lord, today we recognize our need for you. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance. We need your blessing. We need your forgiveness. We need your grace. So help us to love the way that you love, to forgive the way that we have been forgiven, and to provide help to all the people who look to this body, to this county, to this area for administration, for help, for grace. Lord, we ask that you would bless and heal the folks who are sick today. We ask, Father, that you would bring comfort that only you can to the grieving families and to give wisdom to these decision makers. We ask that you would guide and sustain the medical and public health officials as they search for some sort of a healing that would come from you for this virus. Father, we ask that you would protect the frontline workers, the nurses, the doctors, the ER people, the firemen, the policemen, even the military around the world. Father, we ask that you would bless them and encourage them in this very, very important work. Father, we pray for those that you have called to serve this community in this way. And Father, we recognize that we need you. We need your grace. We need your protection. We need your wisdom. And so we just lift these things to you now, Father, and ask that you would hear our prayer in the strong and mighty name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, sir. All right, we will turn our attention to the recap, which is where we talk about any additions or deletions or corrections to our agenda. Under revisions and corrections, we do have one item this morning. For item A2, the county administration has added an agenda item report that was updated. So do we need, I don't believe we even need a motion for that, Mr. Wesch, do we?
No, sir, because it'll be part of the report that comes to you during this meeting.
Okay, excellent, very good. All right, so that dispenses with the recap agenda. Under consent, Commissioner Mann, do you have anything that you'd like to pull for discussion?
I tried to get a notice out, Mr. Chairman, to all you guys. Items 5 and 6, I just need a little 3-minute refresher course on escheated properties. They're both related.
Sounds good. Okay, so we'll pull items 5 and 6. Commissioner Manning, anything? None. I have nothing. Commissioner Pendergrass?
None.
Commissioner Sandelli? None. Okay, very good. All right, so folks in the audience, we will pull item 5 and 6 and take those individually, but at this time, does anybody wish to move the balance of the consent agenda?
Move.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Mann, and the second is from Commissioner Manning. Let's go ahead and take public comment on the balance of the consent agenda items. So this would be items 1 through 13 on today's agenda, minus items 5 and 6. Does anybody wish to speak on those? Okay, seeing none, then we'll close public comment. And we have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we have any further discussion? Do we have any objections? No objections, then that motion carries unanimously. And Mr. DeGillet, will you introduce item 5?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, both these items regarding the conveyance of escheated properties, would like to ask Robert to come to the podium to present the items, please.
And if I could further express my interest in this item before.
Sure, Mr. Clemens, yeah, before you start, Commissioner Mann, go ahead, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, from time to time we deal with escheated properties. We single a handful of them out and we pass whatever motion is required so that we could dispose of them. These are properties we've taken for non-payment of taxes over the years. But the fact is, and this is why I've asked for a little refresher course, there are hundreds of these, it's my understanding, throughout the county. Lots of them are in Lehigh, in my district. Just a week ago, or at our previous meeting, we just dealt with a handful of escheated properties, most of which I think were in Lehigh. But it cost us a certain amount of money to go through the process of bringing these into county ownership after they've had no taxes paid on them. For it's statutory language spells out what you have to go through and how long and all that sort of thing. I just need as close as you can, Robert, some type of a summary of how many are still out there. What does it cost us to bring them into county ownership and then dispose of them? How do we decide how they're going to get disposed of? Some we look to nonprofit housing type authorities to give first chance at these. Tell me the big picture in a thumbnail sketch of escheated properties in Lee County. How big an issue is it? Will we ever find a cure for it?
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Clemens, County Lands. The escheated properties are tied to the economy like anything else. When the real estate market is good, people pay their real estate taxes. We don't incur a lot of tax certificates, which are certificates issued for non-payment of taxes. Statutorily, properties that are assessed at over $5,000 that don't pay their property taxes are to be considered to be called to sale for a tax sale, or if that property doesn't sell at a tax sale, then it sits on a list of lands available for a period of 3 years, and if they're not picked up, the property's a sheet to the county. As to the overall problem, as you've brought forward, we probably have about 80 or 90 properties that have escheated to the county that we have identified and made available for affordable housing, and that's pursuant to Florida statute as well. Every 3 years we have to go through our inventory. Properties that are not needed by the county, we need to put them on a call it lands available for affordable housing purposes.
Wait, let me interrupt you. You've lost me here already, if I might. You're describing an automatic process of after 3 years of no payment of taxes, they automatically become the county's. I'm still got in my mind this expense that we have to go to make that all happen.
Let me take a step back. When someone doesn't pay their taxes, they get issued a tax certificate. If that tax certificate isn't purchased by the open market and that property has an assessed value of over $5,000, we have to consider it for purchase, for the county's purchase of that tax certificate and call it to sell. For us,
because nobody in the public has bought that certificate because they don't think it's worth buying.
Correct. Or for whatever reason it wasn't purchased. If it's over $5,000 and we call it to sell, or to call that property, that certificate to sell costs us about $650. We have a line item where every year we analyze what properties fit that criteria. We also analyze those properties, those that aren't very marketable, maybe they have something that they can't be used by anybody. We do not bring those onto our inventory. We look at things that we feel would have some type of use, be it in the open market or to the county practically in the future. So we're not taking on a bunch of hangnail type of properties that are going to cause us overall management problems. That's not to say we're not going to get calls on those things over time because they're sitting out there and causing neighbors issues, but we're not purposely bringing those into the county inventory. The The certificates, I don't know that number now, how many certificates are out there. I'm thinking it's a couple of thousand, but those are certificates that when the taxes come due, you know, we have, I think they're called in June. So there's a lot of delinquency in the month of June, and then it tapers down as we go through the year. So you could see a huge number, and it'll dwindle down by the time we get to the end of the year. As to our overall management of this, you know, we have brought those properties that we have called to sell, those properties that we have called to sell and taken into our inventory to liquidate them either through a not-for-profit. In some instances, we have people that actually want to buy some of these properties that have escheated to us, or in the instance of the properties today, we saw these properties in Cape Coral. They escheated to the county mainly because of non-payment of the assessments on those properties. So the county doesn't have a need for those. It falls into that area where these properties have an assessed value of greater than $5,000. So we convey those back to the municipalities so they can handle them so as not to, you know, the non-payment of those assessments in Cape Coral affect their balance sheet as well.
Do they want them? Cape Coral? Do they have a choice?
They don't have much of a choice. If you recall, probably about a year ago, we had a 20-acre tract of land that escheated to the county, and that piece of property had accrued about $2 million worth of delinquent assessments on it, and that created a burden on the city. So if we convey these...
How? They don't know the money.
What I'm saying is that property owner had control of the property. They did not pay their taxes, and the city couldn't force payment of the taxes without going through some foreclosure process. By it escheating to the county and us conveying it to the city, now the city owns that property and can control the financial obligation that has created for them. And that's what these escheated properties going forward today will do. They will allow the city to handle these properties. They can sell them at whatever price they may wish to sell them at once they receive them.
Once somebody has paid the taxes on it and they're drawing interest, that's why people pay the taxes, right?
Correct. People buy a certificate and pay someone else's taxes. They get a certificate and it pays good interest, and they buy it based on, they bid on an interest factor. Correct.
But nobody wants to pay that interest, and that's why these get on the list that we're looking at.
If that could be the case, in most instances, somebody who invests in a property, they have already put money in, they've paid the taxes on this, they can also call this property to sell, and that's what a lot of these investors in tax certificates do. So they make money on the interest of the non-payment of the taxes for that period of time, or they call the property to sell and get a tax deed if someone else doesn't buy it, and then they can sell that real estate asset.
What's it cost them?
Commissioner Mann, I believe Mr. Wesch wanted to interject something real quick. You're
Mr.
ready?
Chair and board members, I was just going to hopefully assist. And perhaps if we think of this process as the last resort, it will help our thought process. Commissioner Mann, you're exactly right. There are various steps that the processes go through. These are the real properties that basically nobody else wanted. So by default, they come to the county. And that is the process that we have in operation here. Now, the statute does allow for those real properties that lie within a municipality, us to convey those to a municipality and basically let them deal with real properties that nobody else in the market has wanted.
Yeah, we can do that with the Cape. We can't do that with Lehigh, of course. There's no city there.
Exactly.
And other than the Cape, there's not very many of these properties
and
other than Lehigh.
Like I say, this is the process of last resort. This is ultimately what happens to real property that no one else in the market wanted.
Okay, I won't drag this out, but I'm still going to need a primer from you guys from time to time because I still don't know what the long-term solution is because we have, and you mentioned possibly 2,000, and they don't disappear every year. I mean, we're dragging forward and increasing annually, are we not, the number of parcels that fall in this category?
Again, they ebb and flow with the real estate values. Those certificates.
But they're accumulating is my point. I know some years will be worse than others.
Commissioners? Yeah, I'd say Robert doesn't have those numbers in his hip pocket today, but we're happy to put together some bullet points for you that will show you over the last several years how many we've accumulated, how many we've transferred to cities, how many have been sold, donated. It's a fairly simple spreadsheet.
I'm looking for a solution to deal with this in finality somehow, sometime, rather than just let them accumulate and increase in the number that are waiting for us to take action on.
Right.
Because they are not marketable or they wouldn't be just sitting out there. Is there any solution that staff would have in order to speed this process or reduce the number that continue to accumulate?
Yeah, we don't have a recommendation right this minute, but let us take a look, if it's okay, at the a history of the last several years. And we'll see where those properties are, what's happening.
Mr. D, I think that's where I'm at.
Okay.
I'm looking for a staff review of how this process never seems to cure itself, and the long-term view of it looks like there is no solution. So,
Commissioner,
it would be great if we had 1,000 units all in one piece.
Would.
Then you'll find them marketable, but these are shotgun all over the place. And it's a wound that we never seem to be able to heal. And I appreciate the time that you've given me to understand it a little better, and I'll move both items.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of both items 5 and 6 from Commissioner Mann, and the second came from Commissioner Manning. He beat you to it just by a little bit. Let's call for public comment on items 5 and 6 on the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on those two items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close. You want to talk about the escheated properties? Okay, come forward. And if you could, when you get up here, just state your name for the record.
Right, do I take this off?
Sure.
Okay, good morning. My name is Jasmine Miller, JD. I am an homeless advocate, and I'm very interested in learning about this process. I didn't know that this existed. I'd like to see if I could meet with the very educated gentleman over there, I forgot his name, ASAP. We have now formed the Homeless Care Foundation here in Fort Myers, and we have developed a trust fund to take care of the homeless. The vice president of the trust fund is Mr. Willie Joe, and we have other officers. We're going to start a meet at Nini's house, 415 Marsh Avenue. I really believe that the only people who can take care of the homeless are those who will walk in the shoes of the homeless. And since I'm a homeless lady, and I used to be a lawyer, and I have a legal mind, I'd like to sit down with you ASAP and for you to educate me about this process, which is good. And if I think if we use this process properly, we won't have any homelessness in any county in this great state and in this great country. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments this morning. Well, Mr. Miller, come on up. You want to talk about whether or not we should escheat these properties to Cape Coral and Fort Myers, as well as Lehigh Acres?
Hello, I'm William Joseph Schopenler, advocate. There's solutions here, and as you say, together we can. We can't. You got vacant property that just sits. You got apartment buildings on Broadway that have text pictures to Mark Marada, the assistant city manager, and Ray Sandelli in that they can be rehabbed pretty easily. We need to know who owns them. If the city owns them, why not let's use them? Also, Veterans Human Services was doing some houses that they rehabbed and sold in North Fort Myers. They said they bought them and then sold them. Why not work with the homeless and give them a house on time? You know, we raised money. I got 10 grand. I got 10 grand that I would put up right now. I got to pay that does that. She said, well, why you do it? I said, because I got a daughter and I want a better world for her. So together we can. There's no excuse. You got the place to sit. You guys want grass you need cut, whatever. You got people in them that want to be off the street. There's a lady that's working. She pays $80 for a motel just to get some rest for a couple nights each night. You know, she can afford $500, $600, you know, for a room. Okay, that's bringing in revenue to aid the nonprofits that feed people. After I leave here, I'll be going down to Centennial Park. Those bags I got food for people. I volunteer. I have post-traumatic stress. I have early dementia, but I'm not going to give up. I got the pride that says, hey, a person's got to contribute to society and do what he can. And when something's wrong, you address it. That's why I'm here, voicing, and we got solutions, you know, so let's work together. Also on that vending thing, I text you, selling pop like, you know, the Mexican vendors do, to raise money to pay for some of this stuff. You know, I bought one of those carts, and I'll gladly do that, you know, and then put it in a fund that's showing us, hey, you know, we'll pay it, buy it from whoever, you know. So there's 10 grand. We'd like to get a couple of those storage things at about $1,000 to keep stuff in, put on the property, and have some that's benefiting society, okay? So I'm hoping that by the next meeting, I'm cooking in some place. The other people that come got a place to cook. It'd be nice to get the bus station, finding out about that, the old Greyhound, because that'd be a good resource center. But let's all talk, okay?
Thanks, Mr. Schottmiller, and we'll hear from you, looks like a little bit later as well. Okay, so we have anybody else who wants to speak on items 5 and 6? Okay, we'll close public comment on that. Do we have any further discussion on items 5 and 6? The escheated properties? Okay. Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? All right, no objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, so let's move to the administrative agenda. Mr. DeGillet, will you introduce item number 1?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking you to approve an extension of the surplus toll agreement with the City of Cape Coral. I'd like for Mr. Winton to present the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. This agreement extends an agreement between Lee County and the City of Cape Coral dating back to 1995, and it governs the use of surplus tolls that are generated on the Midpoint Bridge and the Cape Coral Bridge. And those surplus tolls in the past have been used for the whole Midpoint Bridge all the way to US 41, Colonial, and then up through Veterans and now Burnt Store Road, that whole quarter. So all the funds from this have been utilized for those projects. What this agreement does is extends this for another 10 years to 2030. It identifies a number of potential projects. They're not all inclusive, so some of them may be done, others not. There may be projects that would be added to this list. It outlines some potential discussion of design concepts for the westbound span of the Cape Coral Bridge, which will be done. That's not an either-or thing. The westbound span will be replaced. And then also discusses, based on volumetrics, whether another bridge would be warranted and could even be feasible. Just looking at that as part of a planning process. As I said, the Cape Coral Council approved this on August 10th. I also want to thank Persides Zambrano from the City of Cape Coral, who helped out on this agreement, helped out on the previous gas tax agreement. She's been very helpful in getting both these agreements approved.
Very good. Do we have any questions for our staff on this?
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. Okay, and then we have some comments, Commissioner Mann and then Commissioner Pendergrass.
Just make me understand better. I'm looking at the blue sheet here. It says after mutually agreed upon projects are completed, 40% of the surplus would be given to the Cape for their use, et cetera. However, 100% of funds have been dedicated to projects thus far, et cetera, et cetera. Make me understand the 40% and the 100%.
So
What does that sentence mean?
So the surplus tolls are generated after you pay for the operating expenses on the bridges, after you pay for the maintenance on the bridges, after you pay for the debt on the bridges, and then after you pay for any projects that Cape Coral and the county have agreed upon. And then after all that is spent, then if there is any surplus left over, Cape Coral would get 40% of that. That hasn't happened because all the projects we have done together have used up all those surplus.
That's what the 100%
By agreement,
talking
yes.
about. So the 40% is just, we just throw in that for in case it ever happened.
Correct.
But we've got so much already obligated for the foreseeable future through this extension.
Correct.
That we're not going to have to argue about whether it's 40 or 50 or 20 or anything, because 100% of the alleged hoped for surplus is already obligated.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Absolutely.
Well, then I won't say any more. Thank you.
Commissioner Pendergrass.
Thank you. And Pete, some of the funding over the next 10 years also accounts for the new westbound bridge replacement. So it's not really a new bridge.
Correct.
I know a lot of people think it's a new bridge coming over from Iona or something, but it's just for the replacement of the westbound existing bridge. And what was Cape Coral? They already voted on this, so they voted, was it 7-0? Do you know the consensus of the Cape
It was,
Council?
yes, it was
It
unanimous.
was unanimous, but the Cape Coral Council. Great. Thank you for working with the city of Cape Coral. We had a lot of good things the last few weeks happen here between Lee County and Cape Coral with the purchase of the conservation lands and that with this new bridge agreement. So thank you for working on that.
Very good. Any further questions?
No, I had the questions.
No? Okay. Very good. All right, so let's move to public comment. We have a motion and a second on the floor, but does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the Cape Coral Bridge Agreement? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Do we have any further discussion on this item? I just had one quick question. Gosh darn it, I see Pete walking away. When is the payoff date? When will the debt that's on the bridges be paid off?
I'll give you the exact date. I don't remember exactly. I believe 2034.
Okay.
But let me check and get back to you.
Yeah, I figured they were probably 30-year bonds, and I know this was
Right.
25 years ago that we originally started it, so might have 5 years left, you think, or
More than that.
a little more than that?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, if you can send that to me, that'd be great. All right, any further discussion on these items? No? All right, and then seeing no further discussion, are there any objections? No objections, then that motion carries unanimously. All right, let's move on to item number 2, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd like to ask Mr. Salyer to present this item as we're asking for permission to provide additional services with the CARES Act dollars. Glenn?
Commissioners, this morning we offer the next evolution of the Lee Cares program for your consideration. As the county manager indicated, we've got a couple of new programs we're proposing. The first would be to allocate $5.5 million to our municipalities for reimbursement of their COVID-related expenses. The second would be to make $10 million available for a human services grant program. We'll talk about that in just a moment. On September 8th, we would like to close down the current individual and families assistance and business rehire grant programs. That corresponds with the county's year-end process where our procurement team and the clerk's office need to shut down disbursement processes for a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. We really won't be able to process payments at that time. So what we're proposing instead is to launch the Human Services Grant Program. We would accept proposals and approve those, and we would also move into an additional round of PPE distribution. On the Human Services Grant, you can see there we're proposing to make one-time assistance available of between $5,000 and $50,000 based on the agency's proposal to us. It would be a reimbursement of both programmatic and expenses incurred due to COVID. On the programmatic side, think of things like food, shelter, technology that had to be purchased to allow for virtual service delivery, legal services for things like rent and mortgage foreclosure assistance, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So what this would look like, again, is September 18th, our current programs application would close. September 21st, we'd open the Human Services Grant. And in the meantime, you can see the dates here for some additional PPE distribution. We recently concluded the school distribution. We're moving into public distribution, and we've been working with the municipalities on that. We're also going through nonprofit agencies, and we will be using our county library system as well. And then you can see additional business rounds upcoming starting September 15th, where we expect to help 3,000 businesses. That field any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman, I will move the requested motion by the county manager.
Okay, and so we have a motion for approval from Commissioner Manning, and the second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. And so one question I had, Glenn, again, just to kind of clarify it completely. So after October, when we start the new fiscal year, you anticipate opening another round of business and individual grants?
Commissioner Hammond, I think we would come to the board with probably new proposals. We are watching what some of our sister jurisdictions are doing, and as these programs evolve, the way the service is delivered is morphing. So, for instance, a couple of places are instituting new foreclosure prevention programs where they work with the local bar association, legal aid society, et cetera. And we could see us proposing the same kind of thing depending on how those go. So we're watching them closely. So I think we would be proposing additional programs, but they might take a different form than you've seen to date.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great program to see. I think one of the things we want to do is as the foreclosure and eviction moratoriums come to an end, we would not want to see a bunch of people losing their homes. You know, anything we can do to prevent people from going homeless would be a real goal or priority for us. Yes, so, very good. Any Commissioner
Just
Mann?
following where you're headed, I think, do I understand that the applications for these ongoing programs are running out? Why? That's why we're shutting them down and looking at different ways to spend this federal largesse.
The number of applications is slowing, Commissioner, and so we do think probably different forms of assistance are warranted going forward. So we're exploring those options now.
Okay, very good. What other questions do we have?
No, it's my congratulations to the team. I think what's been interesting is we've all been learning through this process. Things change, and it's interesting to see how we can adapt to make sure that we're listening and applying the funds, you know, in a way that is not fixed, but it's flexible. And I think the team's done a great job in listening to that.
I agree. So. Yeah, excellent. Okay, very good. Well, at this point, let's go ahead and take public comment on the item number 2, the Lee Cares item. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on this? Okay, come on forward.
Good morning again. I'm Jasmine Miller, JD. Just want to make a brief comment to let you know what's going on amongst the homeless. As of today, I have never or not met any homeless person who has benefited from the Lee Cares grant money. Nothing. None of them have gotten anything. So at the beginning of all this, I've told you, America's finest, the brains in this place, that I'm asking you to please find a way to trust some of that money aside for the homeless, even if it's $1 or $2. If you go around the homeless group, you ask them, did you receive any money from the Lee Cares grant money? They'll tell you no. I think something should be done. When you give the last $10 million to the Veterans Department, I need somebody to invite us, the homeless advocates, and some of the homeless, and let us tell you where to put our money. I think we're entitled to some of that money. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on this item? Come on forward, Mr. Shotmore.
I think that you, up there was like a $50,000 one-time grant or whatever. There's a lot of places out there that could probably be bought, rehab, and we help them with the solution. For those that want to be up the street, you're going to have people that don't want to be. But the ones that do, you're going to clean up that park. That park should not be, it's a place for kids to play, not for people to crash or, stay at. It's a park for going and having a picnic, whatever. But right now, that's the only place some of them got. So Johnny Streets at a meeting, we were looking at a church on Lincoln Street. Since then, that got purchased.
Real
That was
quick,
way back.
not to cut you off, but on this specific item, we're talking about the Lee Cares program.
Yeah.
And these specific enhancements. If you want to talk about the park, we can get to that later when you come up for the public presentation
Okay,
matters by
I'm
citizens.
just
But
saying, that-
on the item we're going to vote on, what are your comments on that?
Okay, well, there's $50,000, like I say, that could be utilized by the nonprofits to, get this housing, so people aren't at where we're talking about parks. Okay?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Any further comments then? All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioner Pendergrass.
Add to the record of, so this item here, the Lee Cares Act, I understand the people's concern as far as this money is given to the county with strict restrictions from the Treasury. It has to be given to people that had COVID-related losses. So if you had employment and you lost your job because of COVID-related, then that money is being redistributed. But money has been provided to the community through the homeless shelters as far as food banks, food pantries. So the money is coming out to the community. It is out getting to the community in different perspectives. As far as actually giving cash to people, that money is restricted by the federal government. We're not actually allowed to give cash to people. We're paying bills from people that were COVID related. So people that were affected by COVID. There is other funding in our human services. I think we had $68 million last year funded through human services that is going to the homeless, that is reaching out to the community though.
Very good. Commissioner Mann, you're
I
recognized.
wondered if Glenn has anything else to add to the clarification, and thank you, Commissioner Pendergrass, for your comments on this, because it's impossible to understand how a lady can come up here and say she doesn't know a soul, and she works in the homeless industry, as it were, and we've given out millions so far. How can this seem so inconsistent?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Mr. Moore to give us an update on the conversations we've been having with Salvation Army for care of the homeless. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Mark?
Thank you, sir.
Where's the money going? I mean, we've spent millions, yes? Have we had hundreds of applicants?
I can talk specifically about the HUD fund, CARES grant that was allocated to human services. That money was allocated to programs such as rapid rehousing, our non-congregate sheltering, and Commissioner Pendergrass mentioned the food banks. So the money is being spent. It's not specifically given to homeless individuals. However, it is being allocated to organizations and nonprofits that do work in that area.
That serve these very people.
Absolutely.
They may not be getting the grant directly, but indirectly, they're the beneficiaries.
That is correct.
That's the point I think I'm trying to make here, that we're not, it's not being thrown in the Clues-Hatchie.
So if I may, County Manager mentioned us working with a local nonprofit to stand up a day shelter, and that work continues to happen at this point. A lot of the funding for the first year of that operation will come from that HUD grant that we receive as part of the CARES Act.
Okay, and now we're looking for an even more efficient use of these dollars that are still available to us, and we have plenty of them, but we can do better at distributing these dollars than what we're doing right now, so that's why we're shifting gears as we continue forward. No? Yes?
Well, I'd agree. From a homeless perspective, the services that we're providing or proposed to provide at the day center is wraparound services. So you'll get mental health counseling, social work. Our coordinated entry folks will work out of that particular center. Food distribution, clothing distribution, showers, haircuts, all of the human services that you can imagine we're trying to cluster in a central location so that we can deliver them more efficiently and engage all of our nonprofits in one singular spot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Commissioners, as part of the conversation with the Salvation Army, the longer-term goal for that organization is to build additional beds for homeless, for temporary shelter, and so, we may be providing some of those dollars as well. What I want to make clear here and make sure that there is no false expectation created. The dollars that go to people for individual assistance, those are not cash payments that go to individuals. Those are cash payments that go to mortgage holders and to landlords. Under no circumstance do we anticipate giving cash to individuals with this program.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, very good. Any further questions for our staff on this item? Okay, so we had a motion on the floor. We did have a motion on the floor, correct? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, very good. We had a motion on the floor. We took public comment. Any further discussion?
One last comment.
Yeah,
So
Commissioner
what, if I understood Roger, the people that the lady earlier was making reference to who have not received direct assistance, if their landlord got the assistance and they were able to stay another month or 3, they're getting the assistance. It's going to their benefit. Okay, that's what I'm trying to make sense out of her comments and what we're doing here.
Yes, sir. And the lack of, not making payments directly to individuals, that's based on U.S. Treasury guidelines.
I think the issue is they're homeless, so there's no mortgagee or being able to be reimbursed, so that's why there's no benefit being paid, because they're homeless. So.
Right, yeah, I guess you could break it down in multiple ways. So for folks who were homeless, probably even prior to COVID-19, if they're used to using services at some of these nonprofit organizations, it sounds like the nonprofit organizations, we've made a way to help them with some of the extra expenses and things like that because of the increased services they're having to provide. So those folks would benefit from the Lee Cares through the nonprofit and their enhanced services that they're providing. For individuals who need individual assistance, like help paying for their utility bills or their mortgage, they're applying for the program and they're seeing that assistance, but the check is going directly to the utility company or the mortgage company. They're not getting a physical check in their hand. And then finally, for businesses, we came up with a way to incentivize business owners to rehire folks, and so those grants are available and they've been applied for and things like that.
Yes, sir.
So nobody's really getting the direct cash payments in their hands. The payments are going to the vendors and things like that, but for the benefit of the people.
Yes, sir.
So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, very good. Well, then I'll go ahead and call the question. If there's no objections, are there any objections to this motion? Okay, seeing none, then that motion carries unanimously. Yep, Jasmine, you can come back up in just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah, Jasmine, we'll have that just 1 minute. It's called Public Presentation of Matters by Citizens. Okay. All right, so that moves item number 2 on the administrative agenda. Let's go to number 3. Mr. DeJoy.
We are asking you to approve the interlocal agreements with the municipalities for solid waste system service funding. And I'd like to ask Mr. Whitehead to come to the podium and present the item.
Okay, go ahead.
And while he's on his way, Commissioners, Doug and Glenn and the solid waste staff have done a great job with this one.
Really, good deal. Well, can't wait to hear all about it. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, gentlemen. This represents a 10-year agreement, 2 5-year extensions for us to provide waste services for several municipalities that are listed in it, including Estero, for example. But what it does is it's an even playing field. None of the communities get, frankly, a better deal or better services than any other, which has been, I think, an issue in the past. And what we also do is we'll provide them household chemical waste services, which they're receiving right now. But it's been well received by the communities around the county. And what it does is it just codifies us collection of services for them, which we've been doing pretty much the same way for about 20 years going forward.
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning, and the second is from Commissioner Mann. Do we have any questions for Mr. Whitehead at all? Okay, thank you very much for the explanation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pendergrass? Yeah, thank you. Anybody wish to speak in public comment on the solid waste agreements? Kim? Well, come forward to the podium real quick, and we'll ask the question for you, Kim, but we got to get it on the record.
No, I wondered when the general, I'm here for general
Oh, the general comments will be at the end. It's called public presentation of matters by citizens.
No.
No, we're almost there.
We're almost there, Kim. Thanks. All right. Anybody else have any housekeeping items I can take care of? All right. We'll go back to the meeting then. Item number 3. So we have a motion and we have a second. Nobody's here to speak on public comment on the solid waste items. All right. Very good. Does anybody wish to object to that item? All right. Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. We have 2 9:30 public hearings, and then we'll get to the part that everybody's looking for. Mr. Wesch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your first public hearing is a request to adopt a resolution following the public hearing to allow the county to utilize the process pursuant to Chapter 197 Florida statutes in order to put the trash bills on the non-ad valorem assessment and collect them via the tax collection process. Commissioners, I have previously provided proof of publication for both this hearing and your next hearing to your clerk. You are authorized to proceed.
Okay, very good. Do we have any questions for Mr. Wesch?
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Anybody wish to speak in public comment on the 9:30 a.m. public hearing on the solid waste assessments? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that. Any discussion? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. And what's number 2, Mr. Wesch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 2 is a request to vacate an easement located at 8471 Casa del Rio Lane here in Fort Myers. Commissioner, there was no objections noted by any of the utility companies or any members of the public. You are authorized to proceed to public hearing.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Wesch?
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have anybody who wants to speak in public comment on the the Fort Myers 8471 Casa del Rio Lane? Okay. All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right. We are now past public hearings. We have no walk-ons and no carryovers this morning. Commissioner items. Commissioner Mann, do you have anything you wish to bring up? No? Commissioner Manning?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, I have 2. I've sent you the information on both. Both are in Boca Grande. One is a ordinance that will be provided by staff and brought back to this board. And the other one is the staff to rename the Boca Grande Community Center Multipurpose Room D. Wheeler.
So your motion is to bring both of those back on a blue
Yes.
sheet at a future meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Manning, a second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any discussion on that? No? Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on Commissioner Manning's items? Okay, seeing none, I'll close that. Any further discussion? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I have one item real quick. I just would like to point out that at 9:45 on September 1st, 2020, Richard Wesch said, "Commissioner Mann, you're exactly right."
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
There you go.
Contract being renewed or something?
It's be coming up.
That 6% thing, I think, what it is. Yeah, there you go.
Commissioner Pendergrass, do you have any items?
No, not after that, so thank you.
Commissioner Sandelli, anything? No? Okay, let's go on.
Are you campaigning again or
wrong.
Always campaigning.
Let's move to committee appointments. Commissioner Mann, do you have any?
I have 3, please. Al J. Quattrone and Veronica Martin to the Land Development Advisory Committee, and Ramey Hall to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
Okay, the motion was from Commissioner Mann and the second was from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any further discussion? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Manning, anything? No? I have 2 reappointments. I'd like to reappoint Bob Knight and Jennifer Sapin to the Land Development Code and the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee.
Move Bob the Builder.
Motion from Commissioner Manning, second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously.
I have some reappointments. I have reappointment of Randy Christ to Land Development Code, reappointment of Bill Inham to EROC, reappointment of William King to EROC, which is the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee, new appointment of Melissa Giovanni to the Affordable Housing, new appointment of Robert Gleason for contracting construction licensing, and new appointment of Mary Campbell, Villa Palm Street Lighting Unit, and new appointment of Michael William Smith for Sunset Cove.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pendergrass, a second from Commissioner Manning. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right. And Commissioner Sandelli.
I just have one reappointment, Linda Stewart, to the Land Development Code Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Sandelli, a second from Commissioner Manning. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right, county manager items, county attorney items, and then we'll get to public presentation of matters by citizens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder that on Thursday, this coming Thursday, September 3rd at 5:05 p.m., we have our first fiscal year 2021 public hearing.
Okay. Anything for our county manager, anybody? No? All right, thank you. We'll see you Thursday.
Yes, sir.
For that. Mr. County Attorney, anything this morning?
Yes, sir. I have the 24th extension of the state of local emergency regarding the county's COVID response. We respectfully request approval.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Mann to extend the state of local emergency on the COVID-19 response, and a second is from Commissioner Manning. Do we have any discussions on that? Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the extension of the state of local emergency? Okay, I have to ask by law. Okay, very good. Seeing no public comment, are there any objections to the motion on the floor? No objections. That motion carries unanimously.
I have a question for the county attorney. I haven't had a chance to get brief yet. There was another fire last night in Fort Myers, the MH Horticulture. I know we had some pending litigations from March on that case. And there was another fire last night. Have we had any updates recently from the courts on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We are currently seeking an emergency hearing in the circuit court to have the nuisance aspect of that ongoing operation addressed by the court. I believe we have a hearing set for sometime in October. It was delayed, unfortunately, due to the COVID response and the judicial system's answer to COVID. And then also one of our key witnesses regrettably came down with COVID, so we had to postpone the hearing. But we are set to go back across the street. I believe it's in October. I can get you the specific time date.
Can we clarify something too, real quick? I see the property, well, not even the property owner, the lessee, the person who's leasing the property and running the business out there, complaining that it's just the county picking on her small business. But we're talking about multiple code violations and multiple fires over multiple years, correct?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
with all due respect, the comments of the lessee have little or no basis in reality. We have laid out an extensive enforcement history against both the property owner and the lessee's activities. We can document those. Those range from fire to crossing over into other people's properties. We will have all of these addressed by the court. There is no doubt in my mind that this constitutes a public nuisance, and in response to any comments offered by the lessee, I would refer any interested party to perhaps talk to some of the MW's surrounding property owners and talk with them about what they've been forced to live with due to the conduct of MW.
Yeah, I mean, this has nothing to do with a vendetta or going after any small business. What this has to do with is just multiple nuisances, fires, code violations over years, and basically just blatant.
Disregard for the county's ordinances, and I apologize for interrupting, but I assure you there is no vendetta as a motivation in this or any other case brought by my office. This matter is one that needs to be addressed by the court system. The situation that's been created out there and the turmoil and upheaval that the surrounding property owners have been forced to live with is unconscionable.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think this is code violation is also improper use of the property based upon the zoning, and I think you said it. Your office didn't bring this forward. The residents in the area had requested this after years of them not being in compliance. That's where we're at today, is because of the surrounding businesses who's got pending lawsuits too, I guess, against the business, and it's the quality of life of people having to trying to live in their homes with the smoke and the constant nuisance of the improper use of the property. So, thank you. Just trying to get an update on it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else for our county attorney? No? All right. Now it's time for the public presentation of matters by citizens. This is the time when you can come and talk about any item that is not on the agenda today, so anything you wanted to share with us. We've got the podium set up for you. You don't have to touch anything when you get up there. There's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light right at the top that will tell you when the red light comes on, it'll tell you your time is up. We want to keep it fair, so we're going to give everybody the same amount of time. It's 3 minutes. So, Mr. Hawk, come on forward. I'd love to hear your comments.
Before you get the parking ticket.
Right.
You might want to hold off on that until I'm done, and you can decide.
You always have great comments.
Well, thank you. I try to keep it light. I come here to complain, but I don't come here to embarrass or make personal attacks. I come here because I feel like I represent thousands of people in Lee County who don't have the ability to come down here. They would love to come complain, but they have jobs and families, and it takes a big chunk out of a day to come down here. And especially if we prepare it all, it takes days to prepare. And for me, after all these years, I still get nervous when I come up here. It's a very intimidating forum. So today I came to say hello to Ray Sandelli and say goodbye to John Manning. John Manning was here 20 years ago when I made my first appearance. And I came here, there was, if you remember, a sales tax on the ballot, 1 cent sales tax. And Brian Griffin, Red Blanchette, myself, Jack Tanner, we all joined forces and we beat that sales tax 83-17. And I was really pumped and stoked after that. Then 2 years later, it came around as a half-cent sales tax. Our same team got together, same routine, but because it was a half cent, and that time there was a threat to close the trauma center, that tactic kind of worked and scared people, and the vote was 67%, if I remember right. And then 2 years ago, the school board did the half-cent sales tax. My friends have died, but that's not why I wasn't as effective. The reason I wasn't as effective is other people who helped me is the mainstream media, the local media, news press, the 3 local networks wouldn't cover the protest side. They only promoted the tax. So 49% voted against the tax, and we lost. So just to wrap up, in 20 years, we have gone from a $5 trillion national debt to $27 trillion. And that's what I was worried about 20 years ago. I thought this has got to collapse. And in 2008 it did, but then we printed money that didn't exist and raised the debt and postponed the inevitable. So I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about my grandkids. Eventually there's going to be some kind of collapse. I hope it's not catastrophic. I hope it's just like a reorganization, a resetting of the whole worldwide monetary system. Maybe the yen will be the next global currency instead of the dollar. But we're going to see some weird things happening when this finally does happen. You can only kick the can so long, and then it all crumbles. But anyway, nice to be here. Nice to meet you, Ray Sandelli. And have a great retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Hawk.
And my regards to your wife. We briefly worked together at Ida Baker. And good to see you, Frank.
Okay, always a pleasure.
Did you say this was your last term?
I didn't say it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, I'll see you
Hawk.
for at least
All
the
right.
next 4 years.
Let's call up Jasmine. I know you want to speak, so come forward.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And then I got William Joe Shopmiller next.
Yes, thank you, sir. My name is Jasmine Miller, J.D., and I'd like to, well, he left, but I want to tell him I was going to invite him to go and read Revelation 6. The horsemen are riding, and they're riding hard. But anyway, I'd like to say something regarding the COVID care, the money. And I want to address it to Commissioner Pendergrass, but to everybody else. Now, I'm asking the board or the group to set aside an allocation of $5,000 in a trust fund for each homeless person that's identified as homeless. And I say identified by the homeless advocates will tell you if they're truly homeless. And then we will go from there, because it may come down to, we may have to go before a judge for the judge to decide whether or not that money should be for the homeless person. It won't be money given directly to the person. It will be money put in a trust, and the board of trustees will decide how they will spend that money to better that homeless person. Because I can tell you one thing, if a homeless person has $5,000 in a trust, he won't be homeless anymore. That will be a start. Thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you, Jasmine. And Mr. Schottmiller?
I hope we can, get a solution here very soon. Mr. Manning, wish you the best. Mr. Manning, I wish you the best on your retirement. You brought up about money being...
Not who's retiring here, it's the guy beside.
Oh, Manning, okay. So, together, as you say, we can do this, and I know we can, but everybody's got to work together. When I stated that the city defrauded me, code enforcement, they need to be made accountable, okay? Drug houses need to be closed down like they were in the 90s, okay? I remember people picketing, if any of you have been around that long. We need to work together to have the places, youth hostels. Okay, if you've invested in a youth hostel, you got a place that you bring in revenue, because it's bringing in money. It's a place for them affordable to go. It's bringing in revenue, but it's ran by all the nonprofits. Okay, so they have revenue to feed people, they have revenue to clothe people, and you got something going. Not just talk about we going for donations. So when I'm up here saying we need the money that we're asking out of that money is in an investment in getting people are paying something to be there. There's a girl that can pay $600. She works. Otherwise, she's paying $80 per motel. That shouldn't be. The rest of the time, she's sleeping on the ground. That should not be in this America. Together, we can, okay? So I hope, like I said, when we come to another meeting, we've got a solution. I've got 10 grand. I wanted that to multiply like it's $1 billion. It's helping people, okay? So God bless all of you. I wish you all the best. Like I said, together we can. We all got our faults. We all got our strengths. What we got to do is change our faults and grow on our strengths. So thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. Did anybody else come to speak in public comment then this morning? Okay, come forward.
Morning, Commissioner. I'm Daniel Rodriguez, resident of Cape Coral. This is a first-time public meeting, so a little nervous this morning. Very educational day for me today. It's the first time I see how the system works, and what I've heard a lot of are specific needs for the homeless community, specific problems that the county has, and a way to bring that all together and deal with those kinds of issues. My thoughts regarding the homeless is perhaps redirecting some of that money that's given to nonprofit organizations and create some sort of system. I'm not for bigger government, but create some sort of system that would maybe rehab them and get them to work, give them the skills they need, clean them up for specific time and rotation, give them the assistance they need directly, give them the education to where they can go. Actually get somebody on the street, give them it seems like there's a disconnect of how they can get assistance. They don't know where to go or specifically, what organizations they could go to for help versus getting cash money up front. I'm also interested in, I'm interested in seeing how we can come together and solve some of these issues. The other thing I'm interested on the escheated properties, educate myself a little bit more on that, and whether once taxes are owed for X amount of years, are they still owed at the end of the process, or is it just wiped clean and now you can use that property for something else? Because I do think that you can rezone those properties and level them out and use them for some, for other reasons. So those are just my comments, but I'd like to be a part of the solution, not and come up with creative ways to deal with those.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. All right. Any further comments then today?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out, in case folks watching TV got the wrong impression, Manning is not out of here for another 2 months. His contract's got 60 more days in it, and he's going to be working right here. So
November 13th, right?
Yeah, the budget to pass yet.
yeah, we're no champagne corks yet. Yeah.
Well, very good. All right. Seeing no other business before us then, if then there's no objections, then we're adjourned. Thank you.